From the Homestead Studios in Santa Clarita, California, it's just the Tip-Sters with Melissa Morgan.
Santa what?
If you've got a tip for Melissa, a new idea about an old mystery, an old clue everyone's forgotten about, why there's still no joy in Mudville, anything, tell us about it by calling the Tipster hotline at 832-TIPSTER. That's 832-847-7837, or send an email to jttipsters@gmail.com. You just might hear your tip on the podcast. And now here's your host, writing the governor to demand death penalty legislation for asshole drivers, Melissa Morgan.
More cowbell. Listen, mister, you're the one who's got me to get off my death penalty bandstand, so probably not gonna be writing the governor.
I don't know. After last night, we were running into so many asshole drivers last night. It was
well, we were.
You were. I was ready to be convinced. It was. It was almost. It was bad.
I feel like that's harsh. I feel like it's harsh to write the governor demanding the death penalty for asshole drivers. Although with the advent of cameras and dash cams and stuff, I might have some legitimate proof.
Yeah, there are. Oh boy.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Exactly. We don't need to go into it because everyone experiences it. But
yes.
I do have to say, in this moment, in all truthfulness, I have completely reversed my feeling on the death penalty.
Really?
I have completely reversed. I do feel that, maybe people that confess and are, like, hey, I just want to die, like sort of like a Edward Wayne Edwards. I don't think that they should get to die where they want. Like he wanted to die in Ohio and he ended up dying of natural causes like a month before his scheduled execution date. But I still believe that. I still believe that if you confess, and I just don't feel like you're bringing down the average fucker.
Oh, sorry.
That's what I'm saying. We need if you are taking other people's lives and you are a burden, goodbye. The thing that really troubles me is the number of people that may have been executed, probably were executed, and they were innocent.
And they were not guilty. Right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So life isn't fair. That's the saddest thing I've ever said. It makes me sad to say it, but life is not fair. But I still have changed completely, knowing producer Mark and even Paul Zolo. Even though the way he explained it to me made me very angry and prickly. I don't like the way Paul tells me things because he's just like unvarnished and he's just like,
true.
Really? This is how, he's very aggressive in his feelings, and he's right, so, but I just don't like it. I don't have to like it, but I can
really?
Yeah. You are fired.
No,
I just want to tell you that.
Okay, bye.
So I wanted to say a few thank yous to some tipsters who sent us some emails and some reviews that were wonderful. Tipster Michelle sent us a lovely email from Phoenix, and even a recommendation for tacos when we visit Phoenix, Arizona, producer Mark.
I'm down for that.
You and me both, brother. I feel like Tipster Michelle is a priceless resource right now. She has sent a few emails that are fantastic, and one of them with not only an idea for a case she wants to see covered, but also for tacos in her hometown.
Murder and taco. Yes.
Yeah. Oh, there's actually a host who does a show called Let's Taco About Murder.
No kidding.
Yeah. And she's a wonderful host. Her name is Esther Ludlow, but she has a show. She has two podcasts. One is called Let's Talk About Murder.
That's funny.
Yeah, I don't think it's all like Hispanic people made out of flour or corn, so I don't know what the actual.
Well,
but it's just a great title for.
And she's got a great name too. It's almost as good a name as Melissa Morgan.
Yeah, it's right up there. Yeah, Esther Ludlow, Melissa Morgan, same thing. So tipster Fiona left a beautiful review, and one of the things I love about that is that she is a young person. a college-age person, and said that we can appeal to millennials, even though we're 1,000 years old. It's so sweet of her. And a tipster, Aiden, also wonderful reviews. Now, I don't know how to pronounce this. I don't know if it's initials. I've done a little bit of looking around, and I think it could either be someone named Mackenzie or someone named Michael. But it's MFRYAR. Exclamation mark. That's the name of the their Apple Podcast name for reviewing. But they left a lovely review too, and whoever they are, MF, we'll just call them MF.
Yes, why not?
We'll just call them M.
Oh, we'll just leave it there.
We'll just call them M. M with the other letters
That's a better
behind.
idea.
Yeah. Said that they enjoyed the banter, which is rare, because typically what we get are reviews. It's like, shut the fuck up, bitch, and tell the story, god damn it. Why do you talk so much, you fucking asshole? I hate you so much.
No.
Okay. Well,
That's
not exactly
really
like that.
what
I'm more
happens.
dramatic in my reading, but that's,
We've gotten,
I
think
read between the lines.
We've gotten 2 reviews that say they don't like the banter.
All right, two.
Two.
I know. And yet they bring the whole damn curve down with their nastiness. You know what? If you don't like this podcast, I get it. Sometimes I don't either. You know what you can do? Find another one. There's 600,000 podcasts, and it may not even be about true crime. Maybe you find something else you like maybe some sort of a spiritual meditation podcast where you can, get the stick out of your ass for leaving shitty reviews for people who work their butts off, mostly for free, and put out content. And if you don't like it, it's fine. That's why there's 31 flavors. Just move along.
Steady,
That's
girl.
all I'm sorry.
Steady.
Obviously, this is in McCraw. So this is not the episode I'd wanted to do ever, quite frankly. However, circumstances change and people's schedules change, and this is the one that we're going to do. That came up today, came up a few days ago. I had been asked by several people I went to school with to cover an event that happened at our high school in October of 1980, and I just didn't want to touch it. I didn't want to touch it with a 10-foot pole, a 20-foot pole. I live, 2,500 miles away from there now, and I wanted it. I didn't want to touch it. It was an event that happened, and I didn't want to talk about it. However, a situation where I live now, 2,500 miles from that situation, came up this week. And while they are vastly different, they're also the same. It's students being touched by something they can't control. What happened in my high school was a natural gas explosion. And what happened 5 miles from our house was a disturbed young man who took the lives of some people, and eventually he succumbed to his own injuries a day or so after what happened. So it's 2 stories, but it's the same story in a different way. And some of you may be familiar with the fact that we live in Santa Clarita, California, as producer Mark mentions in his stellar intro, which I love because the Homestead Studios is his creation that has been around for decades, and he has produced amazing content in his Homestead Studios, his own amazing work and the work of 10, 11, even more artists that are on his independent record label. So I'm honored to be part of Homestead Studios. It's interesting. I guess I didn't even mention to you, producer Mark, that you are a cottage industry now. So you produce.
I am. Okay.
You're a cottage cheese industry.
Yes.
Which cheese is my second love, only to you.
Yes, I'm kind of up there with cheese too.
Yes. So you produce wonderful musical content. You have produced something that he would send out in the old-fashioned way and work his butt off called The Letter from Home, where he would collect bits from very talented friends of his, whether it be stories or music, and put it together on one CD and mail it out to everyone. the old-fashioned way that you did stuff as opposed to sending everyone an MP3. I think toward the end, when you stopped doing it, people probably could get MP3s.
Yes, and I did start sending it out that way.
Right.
Right at the very end.
Right.
Yeah.
Technology catches up with all of your fantastic creative endeavors. And here we are, coming up on ending the second year of a podcast that neither of us thought would ever happen, and here we are. And Homestead Studios I'm proud to be a part of Homestead Studios. So what happened near Homestead Studios is that there was a young man who was obviously troubled, and on Thursday morning of this week, his mother dropped him off at Saugus High School. And Saugus, Santa Clarita is made up of a couple of small towns, and Saugus is one of those small towns. And there are 3 or 4 high schools in the area, in the Hart High School district, but Saugus High is a big one, and very sports influenced and hometown pride influenced. Where they're located, there is a kind of a large hill, and there is an S on the hill for Saugus High, and their mascot is the Centurions, which is pretty strong mascot you got there. There's no banana slugs, Santa Cruz banana slugs at Saugus High. It's a lovely school with wonderful people in the area, and producer Mark was probably working in his home office, and I saw the news. And we are really blessed in Southern California. We have local news stations that are tremendous. They're on a story before you know what happened.
We have good local news here.
Really great local news, in my opinion. And I saw something I never wanted to see, and wondered, quite frankly, how it happened so quickly. So a helicopter reporter, who is very respectful, by the way, for KTLA Channel 5, zoomed in on someone pounding furiously on someone's chest that was lying on the ground, and then pulled back because they had been working on the person furiously for a while. And again, I know this reporter would never have done. He's so respectful. He will tell the camera person to shoot away from what's happening, because he doesn't want something to be seen by maybe someone who's very young or could be traumatized for the rest of their life. He's a very respectful helicopter pilot and reporter, and they showed something that was difficult to watch. And what had happened, and it still didn't, it's described by the LA County Sheriff's, the head of the LA County Sheriff, Alex Villanueva, as a silver lining. Hard to call it a silver lining, but the young man who has succumbed to his injuries, and I'm only going to say his name once because I don't want to say his name, and I know it may sound sad because he may have had a lot of issues, but none of the issues he had were reason to take someone else's life. So his name is Nathaniel Burhow, and he turned 16 on Thursday, November 14th. And he decided that was a day he was going to make a grand statement. And he completed his task in a terrible way, and it took him 16 seconds, ironically, to finish his task on his 16th birthday. And I want you to think about that. 16 seconds to destroy hundreds, if not thousands, of lives. He took 2 immediately, wounded 3 others, and took his own life. And 16 seconds is nothing, and yet it is everything. Sometimes there are people or events that can change the outcome of something terrible, even if they can't stop it. And this young man was dropped off in front of Saugus High by his mother, dressed all in black, which isn't rare. A lot of teenagers wear black. A lot of old women wear black. I'm one of those old women that wears a lot of black. And pulled a .45 caliber semi-automatic gun out of his backpack. He shot one student. The gun jammed. He cleared the jam. He shot 4 more students and turned the gun on himself. And he counted the shots as he shot, I guess wanting to make sure that he saved one for himself. And he did. The first victim was 15-year-old Grace Ann Mulberger. She was a cheerleader and, by all accounts, a sweet, encouraging girl who was a big fan of Taylor Swift and always told her fellow cheerleader friends, "You can do this. We've got this. This is great. You're going to be great." The second victim was a 14-year-old male named Dominic Blackwell, who was on the football team. Everyone adored him, apparently. And these 2 people were not even known to the shooter. There was another male and 2 other females. The females had been shot in the abdomen. So this young man is really lucky that there actually weren't more victims. And again, these were people who weren't known to him. He, by all accounts, was the guy you would never think would do this. So that's interesting and rare. He was not an incel. He had a girlfriend, even though that term, I don't even like that term. I don't like people being put in boxes. So I just use that term because that's what's often used when these sort of horrible things happen. He was a Boy Scout, and he wasn't just a Boy Scout. He helped the younger scouts with all of their scout adventures. He would spend time in class because he was so smart on the honors roll and just elevated in every way intellectually. He would spend time after class when he had finished what was going on in the class planning Boy Scout adventures and trips. He was on the track team. His girlfriend was apparently his emotional anchor, is the way that friends and neighbors described her. His father had died in December of 2017 of a heart attack. Now, if you want to say he came from a troubled home, I guess I'm not giving him an excuse because there's no excuse. His father had been arrested twice previously for DUIs. He was apparently, by all accounts, an alcoholic, and he was in the middle of a custody battle with the shooter's mother. So his father and his mother were not getting along. Obviously, they were in the middle of a custody battle, and during that custody battle in court, the shooter's father was remanded for a mental health check, and at the time they removed all of the guns from the house. Now here's, where nothing adds up quite to me. They removed the guns from the house. He died apparently at home of a heart attack in December of 2017. And yet after the shooter did this rampage a few days ago, they retrieved 6 guns from his family home, and they were all registered to his father. So I don't know if guns are removed from your home, legally. I don't know what happens.
Well, maybe they were returned after he died.
I wondered if they were returned after he died. They were all registered to the father. And unfortunately, the gun that killed these 2 beautiful souls and injured the other 3 is untraceable. It's being examined in a lab right now. I don't understand how a 15, almost 16-year-old gets what they call a ghost gun. It was quite possibly put together from untraceable parts bought online, and potentially even part of it built with a 3D printer.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, that's, as you can imagine, like most people in this country, producer Mark and I have had quite a few conversations in the last few days about this. It's terrible no matter where it happens, and yet somehow you never think it's going to happen in your town. And I have to say, I've always felt safe in Santa Clarita on many levels. It's basically known for a stop off of the 5 freeway where there is a Six Flags Magic Mountain. That's pretty much the biggest thing about Santa Clarita. It's got beautiful vistas, less expensive housing because you're a little bit further away from the big city, so to speak. We're still part of LA County, but we're considered a bedroom community. There's a lot of television and film shootings that go along with this area because it can be a lot of different things. Vasquez Rocks, an area, was really widely known for a lot of Star Trek filming because it does look like a moonscape. The rocks sort of jut out of the ground at an angle. Coming back to my geology class at Northern Kentucky University, which is one of the things I loved. I'm really bad at math and science, but geology was fascinating. The striations of the rocks, the way the earth, changes as time goes on. So our area is not known, as an example, a lot of people have Ring video doorbells, and we all belong to this like neighborhood Ring community, and people get angry when people mention an event that happened. It's like, this guy drove by my house slow in this truck.
Stray dog in the neighborhood, peeing on my lawn.
Yes.
Watch out for this dog.
Yes. It's a lot of that, I'll be honest. It's a lot of that because there's just not a lot of, tangible crime. There's as much as any other city, I'm guessing, but I call it Mayberry for a reason, and it's still Mayberry to me. There's obviously, violence and murders and things that have happened, but it's kind of rare. And now we're part of a club no one ever wants to be a part of, and that's a city that's had a school shooting and lost 2 beautiful young people who were never given the chance to live their lives. I believe the male victim was released pretty quickly. One of the female victims was shot in the abdomen and the bullet hit her hip bone, but they were able to clean out the wound and remove the bullet, and she should be going home in the next day or 2. Another female victim was shot in the hip and in the shoulder. I don't know if it moved, if it went one direction and hit the other, because there were only 6 bullets. The gun was empty when it was found next to the shooter. One of the victims, Dominic Blackwell, is the nephew of an LA County Sheriff's employee, and 3 off-duty officers were dropping their children off at Saugus High. And this is the part that, if there's a silver lining, as, Sheriff Villanueva said, it's that there were off-duty first responders and they didn't hesitate and they rendered aid immediately. They saw the gun that was near the shooter, figured that the threat was over, and then just focused on saving the victims. And in seconds, someone was there administering CPR, and yet we lost 2 beautiful souls. Detective Daniel Finn, who was a Santa Clarita Sheriff Station officer, was driving away after he dropped a child off. He heard the gunshots and saw children running, and he turned right around and just left his car and got right into the school. They were able to find trauma kits. Those were used in the classrooms. They were used immediately. Officer Sean Yanez of Inglewood and LAPD's Gus Ramirez were also there. And they, off duty, and they were there within seconds. Within seconds, they started working on the victims on the ground, including the shooter. Now, he died yesterday, like I said, maybe 36 hours after he started his rampage. He shot himself in the head, which I'm not saying if you're suicidal, that's what you should do. I'm saying if you're suicidal, I hope you'll consider getting help. But I've never understood if you're suicidal why you need to take others with you. And these were not others that were important to his life. These were people he didn't know. People that probably would have really liked him in school if they'd gotten to know him, if he'd gotten to know them. These were random people that happened to be entering the school at the same time he was. That's why this case is a little more troubling. They don't know how he became so adept at understanding how guns worked. That, probably because it was a Frankenstein gun put together with different parts, maybe that's why it jammed after the first shot. But he had enough wherewithal to clear the jam, count the shots again, shoot 4 more people, and then himself. I mean, it's all on video. It's not that there's anything we can debate. I don't know if we'll ever know why he did this, what his purpose, not that there's ever a decent purpose for anything like this, but he left no note, no manifesto. He wasn't working for or with any sort of group. All of this is going to be a mystery that he took with him. And while none of us want that sort of a mystery, I know a lot of people would like to, know what happened, not that anyone would ever be able to get to him and get answers if he were to have lived. I actually was wondering if he was going to make it and if they would question him, but he didn't. So we'll never know unless someone has an idea, which the police are actually asking for anyone's help who may have known him or have an idea of what could have happened. They've interviewed so far 40 people, and everyone says the same thing. He had a smile on his face. He helped other people. He was quiet but friendly. He had an elevated sense of humor. One sweet girl named Brooke, who worked on a project with him and other. Here's the other thing. Brooke was younger than him, and other people that worked on this group project were older than him. And some of the older students had reached out to Brooke and said, "Is this the same kid? This can't be the same kid that worked on this project with us." So he was able to work with kids of different ages, which when you're in high school, a year is like a decade. You typically don't have friends of a lot of different ages. I mean, some people do, but to work seamlessly with all these different groups, and he would typically be the stellar one who stood out in the group, from the Boy Scouts to the cross-country team to this group project. This young, sweet Brooke said, he had this sense of humor that I wouldn't get the joke. He would tell me something and I would have to go look up something because I didn't get it. And he was so smart, so much smarter than everyone else. And that's why when in class, if he would finish with assignments early, which he typically did, he would plan Boy Scout adventures. I mean, none of these questions are going to be answered. None of these questions are ever going to be answered, unfortunately. And I don't have a solution. And I'm just going to say this, no matter what you think, no matter who you are, you don't have one either. You can say we have to implement stronger background checks. Okay. You can say we need to take everyone's guns away. No, that's not it. We've had guns forever. Tipster David pointed out that, the Second Amendment, was put in place so that citizens could carry guns in case the government was going to take over and we needed to form a militia. But back when it was written, we were fighting with muskets. So it'd take a while to load your gun. I have my own feelings about guns, rapid fire militaristic guns. I don't own a gun, but I don't care if you do. That's fine. Again, I don't have an answer, and I don't want to fight with you or anyone else about guns. What someone said pretty offhandedly, and I guess it's just the thing I'm going to have to cling to right now, is that it's a mental health problem. I don't exactly know what that means because it's just too fucking broad. It's like when people say depression. Depression means a lot of different things to a lot of different people. And I don't have the answers. And I don't want to talk to you about the answers. What I want to talk to you about is that all of us have trauma. All of us have difficult things in our lives. Most of us may have thought about taking a gun or a rock or a stick or elevating our voices and yelling at someone or hitting them, but we don't do it. We don't do it. And not because we're not mentally ill, because Lord knows I'm as mentally ill as the next person. And I've screamed into a pillow, screamed in my car. That's a good one. But I've never shot anyone or hit anyone or spit on anyone that I'm aware of. The deputy superintendent of the Hart Union School District, Mike Coleman, had what I think is the best statement I've ever heard. It's simple, it's concise, and it's profound. And he said, "I know our entire school community shares my profound sadness and disbelief. Hold your children tight, love them, and praise them for being responsible in the face of fear." I can't imagine a better sentence on earth. Because while he meant praise them for being responsible when someone has a firearm and is systematically killing them and their friends, I think it's a much bigger sentence. I think we need to praise our kids, our friends, our teachers, anyone who's a human being for being responsible in the face of fear. And to me, that means not picking up a gun or not picking up a stick or a rock. It means take responsibility for your fear. Whatever your fear is, don't let it motivate you to do something you can't take back. 16 seconds of the shooter's 16 years changed everything forever for so many people. So be responsible in the face of fear. I think we just need to say that to each other all the time, every day. Thank you for being responsible in the face of fear. And maybe it's me, maybe I'm too fear obsessed. I fully admit that. But I'm going to try to be more responsible in the face of fear. And let's be honest, most things that propel us in a negative way is fear. There's that old saying that there's only two feelings, which is love or fear. And fear is actually, masking pain or other things. So what are we afraid of? It's a rhetorical question. I can't answer that for you or sometimes even myself. But I can tell you, I still believe that man is inherently good. And I still believe that being a human being is traumatic. It's just part of the journey. It can propel us to be better people, or it can propel us to shoot randomly at innocent people who've done nothing because we're angry or we're based in fear. And I'm not saying that's what this shooter was, but I don't have another answer. But I can tell you that students facing something that is unimaginable happens all the time, and it happened way before people shot people in schools. And one of those incidents, I happened to have gone to a high school in northern Kentucky, and on a beautiful October day in 1980, October 9th, I had sat down in French class, and the beautiful Jackie Kane was distributing a French quiz, which I could not have hated more because I was bad at French. Let's just be honest, I barely get through English. But the choices were you could take Spanish, which I wish I had taken now, or French. And I thought French was a romance language, and that was much more sexy. So I took 2 years of French. I think I may have gotten a B and a C. I was terrible. I was terrible. But I loved her. I loved Mrs. Kane so very much, who I recently got to see when I was back in Kentucky. And she's just as magnificent today as she was then. And she had gotten to my desk at some time after 11:30, 11:45. It was close to lunch, I believe. And my desk tipped to the side, lifted off the ground and tipped to my right. And Mrs. Kane was on my left. And I looked at her and I thought, what the hell's wrong with you? I thought she hit me. I couldn't tell if she had like jokingly pushed me, but it would have taken so much force to push me and my desk over. And then I noticed everyone, but she was standing right by me with papers in hand, about to hand out a French quiz. And I noticed everyone else had a quizzical look on their face. I was like, what happened? And seconds later, the fire alarm went off. It never dawned on me that it was a gas explosion. Of course, why would that? You're in school, you're not thinking about, utilities. I thought maybe it was like a bizarre errant earthquake. I wasn't sure what happened. But I can tell you, I got up, and me, Miss Priss ass, I always have to have my purse. And I turned around to get my purse, and Mrs. Kane was like, no, go. And pushed us all out the door, not in an aggressive way, but in a amazingly level-headed, calm way. Ushered us down the steps and out the door. And I never understood this. There's probably some reason, but during a fire drill, and this was no drill, they make you turn around and face the school. I don't get it. But we were all in the parking lot. Those of us that were not out on the field practicing for band or were in other places. Thank goodness, quite frankly, that it happened the way it happened, because it could have been so much worse, and it was bad enough as it was. But many students were in the lunchroom, which was in the south end of the building, and the explosion happened in the north end of the building. And we turned around and looked at the building and noticed that there were flames coming from the lower level heading up toward the library on its way to the chemistry lab, which we all knew would have been even worse. What's more flammable than books and chemicals? What had happened was a natural gas explosion happened in the boiler room of Simon Kenton High School on October 9th of 1980. And a concrete wall, in the words of the fire chief, was shredded and collapsed on top of one Robert Williams, who was also 16 at the time. And while I don't want to mention the shooter's name, I will mention Robert Williams' name as long as I have breath. So Robert Williams was, and everyone thinks their kid's special, but Robert Williams was special. He was a tremendously talented artist. He was an Elvis Presley fan, which was always funny to me because the only people I knew that really loved Elvis Presley were my parents' age. But he would paint the image of Elvis, and it was gorgeous. I mean, he was a very talented kid. He probably lost his life because he was on the ground painting a lower window, and there were other students on stools or painting higher windows that survived because they probably got knocked out of the way. It was, close to Halloween. They were painting Halloween images on the windows. in the art room. Robert was the kid who walked around the hallways singing, give me land, lots of starry skies above, don't fence me in. He was that kid. And it was more than a funny old country western song that a young man would sing. I think it was his life's motto. He was a little bit of a ladies' man. I think this kid would have grown up to have become an artistic version of Hugh Hefner.
Oh, really?
He drove a purple dune buggy. That was his chosen car, which in the winter in Kentucky, not a great choice. But you know, he was so stubborn. He stuck with it. He would stop at friends' homes on the way to his house to warm up, or on his way to work to warm up, because it was a dune buggy. And I frankly don't know how he didn't have frostbite. I don't know how he didn't have frostbite.
Who drives a dune buggy in Kentucky in the winter?
Robert Williams. There was a weird, I think it was a money-making thing that one of the groups would do at Valentine's Day, where they would make paper mache flowers, like little roses. Like white ones, I think, were friendship, and red ones were love or something like that. And they were like $1 a flower. And I don't know if Robert just used every penny he earned doing this, but pretty much every female got a flower from Robert. And it was so incredibly sweet because they would deliver them during class, and someone would knock on the door, whatever this, like boosters team or something, and they would deliver a flower, and it would always be from Robert because I think he loved all females. I think he probably had some females that he loved more than others, but he was just that guy. The guy that would, look at you and you'd see his eyes kind of get soft because I think he just loved chicks, And the thing is, he had so many talents that I wonder what he would be doing now. But when you're a 16-year-old kid who walks around singing Don't Fence Me In, driving a purple dune buggy, and creating exceptional art, I think the world's kind of your oyster. He was such a great artist that Linda Wittenberg, who was the teacher in the art teacher at Simon Kenton High School, who was actually, in her words, helped up by other students when the explosion happened. They were all knocked down and hit by flying debris. She had recommended Robert to the Cincinnati Art Academy to like a special program because he was that guy. He was a special guy. I know all kids are special, but Robert was special, if you can say that. So we were ushered next door to the elementary school after a second explosion happened. Now, the first explosion, I don't know how only one person succumbed to this horrible explosion with a concrete wall falling on them, but the rest of the injuries were basically from first responders and firemen, because a second explosion actually knocked them out of the building. And that's when the flames got bigger because it was being fed by natural gas. And that's when they moved us, after the second explosion, to the elementary school next door. At the time, there was a chemistry teacher who, I believe his name was Stephen Smith, who was a little out of control and was running around to the entire parking lot. I remember he took me and my friend Karen and shook us by the shoulders and said, "Have you seen Robert Williams? Have you seen Robert Williams?" And we were like, "No." So the rumor started quickly that Robert hadn't made it out. And then the rumor started not long after that. "Oh, they found him. He's fine. He's covered with paint. He's fine." So we all went the rest of the day believing that everyone survived and that the only injuries were to fire officials who had been injured by the second blast. Having a mom who worked and a grandmother and grandfather who worked. They were the closest family members to me. I didn't, this is in the age before cell phones for sure, so I didn't exactly know what to do. But I was blessed that my best friend Karen lived pretty close to the high school and the elementary school. And we walked to her house. Apparently there was another friend of ours that I'd forgotten was with us, but I had been reminded of that this last September when I got to see some friends from high school. And Karen said, "Do you remember Tim went through the basement window because he was skinny enough to get through it?" And I did not remember that. But Karen's parents were also at work. And I believe her sister had worked a third shift and was asleep during the day and didn't hear us knocking on the door or didn't wake up. So our friend Tim, I guess, went through Karen's window, basement window, and got in her house. I remember the first person that got to me was my grandmother, and I couldn't have been more happy. The only thing that would have made me happier was if it was my mother, which apparently she never told me until years later that she was at work and someone called her and said there's been an explosion at Simon Kenton, and she dropped the phone and ran to her car. But obviously many parents were trying to get to their kids, and the two-lane road was clogged. So my mom didn't get to me till later. My grandmother got me and took me home. And we spent that day thinking how blessed that everyone got out. And it was later that we found out that Robert did not. Now, it was a big story, even though lots of people haven't heard of this. But it made it to California. And I'll tell you how I know, because my father's mother, my grandmother Beth, lived in Central California. And she sent me a newspaper clipping that said Lisa Morgan had broken her leg running from the building. She was one of the only students that actually had an injury, and it wasn't from the fire or from the explosion. It was from running down the steps, I believe. And she thought that they had spelled my name wrong because she couldn't possibly imagine that there was someone else with a name close to mine in my small little school.
Did you know Lisa?
I did. Yeah. Lisa Morgan was a tiny little girl with curly, very maybe 5 foot tall or something, curly dark hair and glasses, and probably got pushed in the shuffle. But yeah, sometimes if we were sat alphabetically, Lisa would be before me. But so there was a Lisa Morgan and a Melissa Morgan, and Lisa Morgan had broken her leg, and my grandmother just knew it was me and sent me the clipping and, are you all right? I'm like, it wasn't me, Grandma. She was a great grandma, by the way. She would send me these amazing birthday cards with little slots for dimes or quarters. So sometimes I would get a card that weighed 800 pounds, but it was for $5 worth of quarters. Or, when I was 6 years old, I got one with 10 dimes. So I got $1. She was a really spectacular grandma. But yeah, she lived here in California, ironically. So what happens when there's a natural gas explosion? I wish I could tell you more. But CG&E, which is Cincinnati Gas and Electric, took responsibility and said that a 4-inch feeder pipe was in place as opposed to a 2-inch feeder pipe. And they had replaced it 2 weeks earlier. Because it was going to be getting colder in the fall, some school employees had tested the heating system in the boiler just days before the explosion. Several people, teachers actually, said that after the first explosion, they had heard a hiss, a continued hiss. So more gas was being released. And I can tell you that after the first explosion, when first responders were there, and a number of 33 of them ended up being injured on the second explosion, that the second explosion could have been avoided. But what had happened is that the pipes had been paved over. They arrived with a backhoe to dig up the pipes to turn it off. And no one could figure out where it was buried. And a sheriff's deputy jumped on the backhoe and just started digging. And found 6 feet underground, under concrete, found the turnoff valve that had been paved over.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Wow.
So the boiler was actually complete. It had not busted up, but it had exploded so violently that, like I said, the fire chief described it as shredding this concrete wall. And the second explosion could be felt a half a mile away. Apparently, windows were shaking up to a half a mile away after the second explosion, probably similar to an earthquake. So a spokesman for CG&E had said, we have a whole crew that does nothing but go around and uncover these valves that have been paved over. Wasn't exactly pointing fingers at each other, but it's like, well, the school covered it over with some renovations. It shouldn't be, covered up. There's, this district engineer for the Northern Kentucky Highway office said, it's common practice that we pave over these valves and then it's up to the owner to bring them up to grade. That just seems like a cop-out, total cop-out.
That's ridiculous. It would never
Right.
be allowed today.
Right.
Never.
Exactly. Another maintenance engineer said most of the time the owners or the utilities will bring them up to grade if they've been buried, so it's easier to find them. And it's, again, finger pointing. Police and fire crews should have been able to locate the buried valves the same way CG&E does. Well, no one really prepares for this. In the same way nobody prepares for a troubled kid to bring a gun to school. Nobody prepares for these things. As much as we try, and as beautiful as a sentiment as praise your kids for being responsible in the face of fear, and everyone in this situation here in California is saying that the kids did what they were supposed to do. They ran. And I know producer Mark, as a risk manager, has gone through active shooter training, and that for his workplace, and that it is important. I think it's a natural instinct to run. I believe it's run, hide, and the last one is fight, if you have to.
Yep.
Yeah. I think it's our natural instinct to run, even if you don't know what you're running from, if you want to save your life, to hide. And sometimes that works and sometimes it doesn't, depending on the situation. And to fight. Again, sometimes works and sometimes it doesn't. But whatever you choose, you're doing it because you want to live. You want to survive. And when you have no option, if someone is shooting at you, if a wall of flame and concrete is coming down on top of you, you don't have the option. All the training in the world really can't help you right then, but you can still be responsible in the face of fear. And a beautiful clip from another art student, Scott Wallen, who was in the art room. Mark found this beautiful clip. Could you play that, producer Mark?
And then all the steam rose up from under the wall, and we just had time enough to turn around and look at it, and it exploded. It was like a big wall of fire and rock just shot out, like a big torch had shot out.
Well, why did you get out and your friend didn't?
Well, I think it was because I was standing on a stool painting the higher part of the window, and Robert was standing on the ground. And I guess I was thrown back. Because Robert was standing on the ground, I guess he was thrown under.
What was Robert like?
Well, he was a really friendly person. A lot of people could get along with him real easy. He's a good artist, too. He's probably the best artist that SK ever had.
Do you think that you'll ever be able to calm down totally?
I don't know. I hope so, but, in a way I sort of hope I don't. That way, I can still remember Robert, and if I do calm down totally, and, forget this whole thing ever happened. That would mean I would start forgetting Robert. Yeah, and that really shouldn't be done.
Isn't that incredible? For a kid to say that in the midst of his own trauma. I don't want to forget, because it would mean I'd forget Robert. And I don't want to ever forget Robert. Isn't that an incredible thing to say and feel at a time when you're trying to process your own trauma and you're strong enough to know that you want to be able to go on because you want everyone to know who Robert Williams was. And Robert Williams was a real special person, even though I still believe we're all special. And I really hope that we can all praise each other for being responsible in the face of fear. And more cowbell.
You can become a supporter of the podcast by going to patreon.com/Just the Tip-Sters.